Hi, welcome to the Introduction to QGIS course. My name is Kurt Menke, and in this video I'm going to give you a short introduction to the QGIS GES software. First, a little bit about me. I work at Septima. I just moved from the United States last year, so I've lived in Denmark for 18 months at this point. I'm a longtime user of QGIS. I've been using it since 2005, and I've been teaching QGIS since 2009. I'm a GES consultant, so I do quite a bit of spatial analysis and cartography for customers as well as teaching. I'm a QGIS certified instructor and an OSGeo charter member, and I've also written 8 books on QGIS, which I'll tell you more about in the course. So in this course, we're going to begin with the QGIS interface. We'll then learn how to add data from different sources to QGIS. We will work with data setup, so how to control layer visibility. We'll look at attribute tables, how to create spatial bookmarks, select data using queries, and set up layer filters. We'll work on data visualization or symbology, how to label features, and we'll be working with some elevation symbology as well. And we'll finish the course up with editing. So we'll start with an introduction to basic digitizing. We'll then learn how to modify existing features, use snapping settings, and we'll look at a couple of plugins related to editing. So QGIS is open source. So what does that mean? Well, there's basically 2 kinds of data in this regard. There's proprietary data and open source. Proprietary data have a software license that restricts your usage in some way. So it will restrict how long you can run the software, how many features of the software you have access to, how many computers you can install it on, and things like that. And an open source software license flips that upside down and grants you rights to use the software. So it allows you to install the software on any number of computers, to access the source code so you can study how the software works, and to freely share the software with your neighbor. And those are kind of the core principles of open source software. So importantly, that means with QGIS, you can freely download this software and you have access to all the features for as long as you need it. So QGIS is GES software, so you can view spatial data, symbolize it, analyze it, edit the data, and create maps. And QGIS started 20 years ago. We just had the 20th anniversary this spring of the QGIS project. And it was started by this gentleman pictured here, Gary Sherman, who in 2002 needed a simple viewer for PostGIS data. So he started developing QGIS and at the time called it Quantum GES. In 2009, the first version was released, 1.0. In 2013, version 2.0 was released. And at that point, QGIS was officially called just QGIS. So it's no longer Quantum GES, even though some people refer to it that way. In 2018, version 3.0 released, which was a major update. And in 2022, we have 2 versions, 3.22, which is the long-term release, and 3.24, which is the latest release, LR. So QGIS has a very fast development pace. There's an LR released 3 times a year, every 4 months, in February, June, and October. And that's too fast for most people to keep up with. So every spring, there's a version released called the LTR, and that long-term release is supported for an entire calendar year with bug fixes, but there are no new features added to it. So this is what I recommend most people use, especially working in a government agency or a company, because you will have a stable piece of software for the whole year without new menus or features being added to it, which may disrupt your workflow. So you won't have to relearn any new features throughout the year. You're going to have a stable piece of software. And you can read more about QGIS versions and naming different versions at qgis.deco. That's the official page of the QGIS users group. And another thing about QGIS is that you can run it on any platform. It will run on Windows, Apple computers, Linux, and it's even possible to get it to run on a Chromebook or an Android device. One of the powerful parts of QGIS, it's a little hidden, is that it's an application stack. So we have QGIS, and then there's some different open source projects that help make QGIS what it is. So for handling coordinate reference systems and projections, there's an open source project called Proj, and QGIS incorporates that to handle that. There's another set of twin software projects called Godal and Ogre, which are raster vector manipulation softwares, and these allow QGIS to read and write almost every kind of geospatial data. There's a couple of processing softwares, GRASS and Saga, and these are both standalone GES packages like QGIS in their own right, but QGIS can incorporate the processing tools for both of these into the QGIS toolbox. So you can access all the GRASS and Saga geoprocessing tools from the QGIS toolbox without having to learn how to run GRASS or Saga. So it's very handy. And then QGIS also has full support for the PostGIS and Spatialite spatial databases. So when you combine all of this, it becomes very powerful. And QGIS has great interoperability. And by this, I mean it's the Swiss Army knife of GES software. Because of Godal and Ogre, it can read and write almost every geospatial data format. This is the left side of the data source manager, which I'll show you in the course. And these are different tabs for accessing different kinds of data. And you can see for vector data, which is point, line, polygon data, these are all the different formats that QGIS can read. And this will include the common ones like Esri shapefiles, Geo packages, GeoJSON, and even Esri formats such as Esri Geo packages or KML. And here we have raster formats. There's an even larger list of raster formats, and QGIS can read all the common ones, GeoTIFFs, etc. QGIS also has plugins which extend the capabilities of QGIS. And this is the plugin manager, and I'm using a search term to find a plugin. So if I start typing in the word Denmark, I see a list of plugins that are there for providing Danish open geodata. And for any one of these, you can simply select the plugin and click Install to install it. It becomes installed. And then on the Installed tab, you can see which plugins you have installed, and you can check the box next to each one to either enable that plugin, to turn it on, or to turn it off. So the plugin manager makes it quite easy to discover plugins that might be useful to your workflow, then install them and turn them on. So a typical QGIS workflow is described here. So first you're going to create a QGIS project, which ends in a QGIS extension. So you have a couple options here. You can just create an empty QGIS project and start from scratch, add data to it. You can copy an existing QGIS project and then modify it, or you could use a QGIS template. And these are where a number of data sets are already preloaded. So once you've started your QGIS project, you can load more data to it if appropriate. Then the next step is usually to symbolize the data and set up any filters or other configurations for your data that are necessary for your workflow. And then you are ready to perform any data analyses, create maps, edit the data, etc. And an important note on the QGIS project file: it doesn't actually store the geospatial data in it. It's just a pointer to the data. So if you email someone, for example, a QGIS project, and you had used Esri shapefiles in there, those Esri shapefiles aren't in that QGIS file. They're just pointing to where those are on your computer. So it's important to organize your data into folders and to remember that if you're going to share a project with someone, that you may need to share the data with them as well. If you're using networked data, VMS or VFS, or data from one of your PostGIS databases that everyone can connect to, then it may work to pass that QGIS project around. But I just want to let you know that the data aren't contained in that project file. Another note is it's important to save continuously. This is just in case QGIS prep crashes, because you want to avoid the situation where you may be working for a couple hours and then QGIS crashes and you've lost all of your work. And this isn't to say that QGIS crashes frequently, but it can happen. And so it's just good practice to save regularly to make sure that you have a saved project in case anything like that happens. This is what the interface to QGIS looks like. You will have this big welcome page when you first load QGIS, and this will have some recent project thumbnails. So you could left click on any of these to open up that project. There's also a news feed, and this is from the QGIS project, and it's a way for them to inform you about a new QGIS release or a QGIS user meeting or something like that that's important. And then project templates, which are templates for projects that have data already preloaded, and some organizations use those to manage their workflow. You'll have the menu bar across the top, a set of toolbars, and a couple panels here. The browser panel allows you to navigate your file system for data and add that to QGIS. The layers panel will have all the layers added to your project in a stack, and will show you the symbol that you have for each one of those layers. Down at the bottom, we have this locator bar, which is kind of often overlooked, but it's quite powerful. I'll show you this in the course. This allows you to search for features or layers or processing algorithms. It even can serve as a calculator or will geocode an address. So it has a lot of nice little features to it. And this status bar will give you important information such as the coordinate position of your cursor, the scale of your map, and down here is a code for the coordinate system that your map is in. And all of this welcome page will go away when you add a data set to QGIS or if you open up an existing project. You can also click the new project button and it would just replace this with the map canvas, an empty map canvas. So now I'm going to get out of PowerPoint and bring up QGIS and introduce you to QGIS. Okay, so here I have QGIS open and I have my welcome page. So I see recent project thumbnails. The first time you use QGIS, when you don't have any recently saved projects, you won't see anything listed there. This will grow as you use QGIS. I see my news feed, project templates, and even a nice message down here, new QGIS version available. I'm using the long-term release 3.22, and this is just telling me that there's a latest release 3.24 available, just information. I see a couple panels here and my toolbars. So if I want to add new data to this project, it would erase this project screen and bring up my map canvas with that layer loaded. I can also click the new project button and that will just replace the welcome screen with an empty map canvas. It's not a required step, it's just how that interface works. So I'm going to go to my favorites here, which are ways to save project folders, which I'll describe in the course. And I'm going to just add some data. So I'm going to add a Comuna layer here from the browser panel. I'm going to right click on the layer and choose Add Layer to Project. And so now I see a data layer on my map, and it comes in with a random color that I can change. And on my layers panel, I see that one layer now added. And you can see here there's little icons in the browser panel next to my GES layers that shows whether it's a point or a polygon or a line layer. So if I add a line layer to my map, I will see that on the map canvas. And if I add another point layer, I will see that. So one note about these panels, they can be docked, and so that means that you can put them where you want them to be. If I left click on the title of my layers panel and start dragging it, I will see this blue rectangle appear, and that's if I let go of my left mouse button, this panel would be repositioned in that spot where the blue panel is. So I can move this and make it a free floating panel, put it onto a second monitor. I could move it to the right-hand side of QGIS. I could put it back where it was, below the browser panel. But what a lot of users end up doing with this layer and browser panel is that they stack them on top of one another. So if I drag this over the browser panel so that blue rectangle covers the whole browser panel and I let go, this layers panel will now be stacked on top of the browser panel, and you'll see tabs down below so that I can toggle between the two panels. And especially on a laptop screen, which is small, many users find this to be a nicer setup because you can see the whole browser tab when you're using that, and you can see the whole layers panel. Sometimes you get quite a long list of layers, and if you have them both occupying half the space, then it becomes hard to read and hard to look at. So that's how you can reposition those. I could even reposition both of these stacked panels onto the right side of QGIS if I wanted to. So you can move these panels around as you need to. And the same is true with these toolbars. There's a little stippled vertical line to the left edge of every toolbar, and if you hover over that, the name of the toolbar will show in a pop-up. So here I'm hovering over the attributes toolbar, and if I left click on that, I can move that toolbar and undock it or put it in a different position. So you can move the panels and the toolbars wherever you'd like them to be. So I've got 3 layers loaded: archaeological points, cycle routes, and Comuna, point, line, and polygon. And there's a drawing order here. So for example, if I drag Comuna to the top of the layers list, it will now cover those other 2 layers. So I don't see the archaeological sites or the cycle routes here because they're underneath my Comuna polygon layer. So you need to organize these layers in the appropriate order. Usually that's points over lines over polygons, but there may be exceptions. There are some pan and zoom tools here on this map navigation toolbar. So I can use this to zoom in to part of the map. Once I've zoomed in, I can use the zoom last button to move back to the previous extent. So the zoom last and zoom next buttons just allow you to toggle back and forth between whatever extents you've been at. It can be very handy. I can also see from the menu bar that there's this data for Suning menu. This is the data for Suning plugin that allows you access to a lot of open Danish data sets. For example, here's Valgrunskort, and I could add Skamkort Dempel, and it will add this background map to my map canvas. And now this is on top of my 3 layers, so I'm going to drag it beneath them so that I can see those layers, but now I get a little context for where the study area is. You can access more panels and toolbars from the View menu. So if I choose the View menu, near the bottom, I'll see an option for panels. So I can see the browser panel is checked and the layer panel is checked, and there's other panels that I may choose to open. And there's also a toolbars section, and you can see which toolbars I have turned on, and I could turn some of those off or turn on other ones as I need to. Another way to get to these panels and toolbars is to right click here and you'll see the same list. So what happens sometimes is you may accidentally click this X and turn off the layers panel and wonder how to get it back. So I can simply right click and find my layers panel and turn it back on. And now I have my layers panel back. Down at the bottom, you can see the coordinate position where my cursor is and the scale that I'm at. There are some predefined scales, so I could zoom into 1 to 10,000, for example. Another useful panel that we'll use a lot in the course is the layer styling panel. And you can open that by clicking this button in the upper left corner of the layers panel. Open the layer styling panel. And this will open up to the right hand side of QGIS. It's a panel like any other though, so you can left click on the title bar and undock it and put it where you'd like. And this allows you to change the symbology. So here I'm going to use this pan button. This pan button allows me to slide the map and stay at the same scale, but reposition the map where I want it to be. So I have a set of archaeological sites here. And if I wanted to change the symbol, QGIS comes with some predefined symbols, so I could choose diamond red to change them to that, or make them black dots. And for any of these symbols, I can also go in here and do things like change the fill color. We will work on symbology in the course, but that's how that can work. And if I right-click on a layer, I'll also see a set of options for actions I can take with that layer. So if I choose zoom to layer, this will zoom me to the extent of this entire layer. So that's another nice option. Sometimes if you want to figure out where a layer is, you can right-click on it, choose zoom to layer to make sure you're zoomed to the extent. Because as I mentioned, it may be that you don't see it, and that may be because it's underneath another layer and you simply need to move it above so that it's visible. Another option I get by right-clicking on a layer is properties, the very last option here. This will open up layer properties, excuse me. And there's a whole series of tabs on the left-hand side that will give me different information or allow me to configure the layer in different ways. The information tab will tell me where this layer is on my hard drive, how big it is, what format the data is, how many features are in it, the coordinate system, some important things like that. So that's a quick introduction to the QGIS interface. Now that I've been working in QGIS, I may want to save my project. So I could simply click the Save Project diskette and go in here and save this as demo into my project folder. And now I will see the word demo here because I named my QGIS project, my QGIS file demo. So your project name will be up here. And I will see if I pan the map a little bit or make a change, like turn this layer off, a little asterisk will appear next to the project. When that little asterisk is there, it means you have unsaved changes to your project. So if I click the diskette to save my project, that asterisk will go away and the project is saved. If I make a change to my project, like simply turning on a layer, and I go to exit QGIS from the project menu, it will tell me that I have unsaved changes to the project and will ask me if I want to save those changes or discard. So typically, it's hard to make a mistake. If you have changes, QGIS will tell you that you need to save those before you exit. So that's a short introduction, and I look forward to meeting you and working with you in the course.